When you do street photography, every second, countless things happen around you. And your camera is a sort of remote control, which allows you to press the pause button and make this moment eternal. The most common problem that I hear from beginners is that they simply don't see anything interesting. They look around and they struggle to find something that will be interesting to photograph, worthy to photograph. The beauty of street photography is that, unlike any other genres, it grants you this total autonomy. You can work anywhere at any time with no barriers beyond your own willingness to look and see. Your only barrier is actually you and your ability to observe. And what happens when you can't find something interesting to photograph? You either press that pause button way too often, or you just point your camera on random things and get snapshots. And we don't want that. To be able to move beyond snapshots, let's first understand what snapshot actually is. A snapshot is in a way a pure documentation of what is in front of you, but without any intent, without a subjective point of view. It's kind of a I see, I capture type of frame. And I get a lot of these types of photos for review. There is a person walking on the street, and that's it. There is no question in the photograph, and beyond that walking person, there isn't much more to hold on. You have the subject, which is usually photographed from the exact spot when they were seen, and the rest is left to chance. Sometimes, chance works in our favor, and it might look somewhat intentional, but most of the other times, less so. Guys, it's important to understand that everyone can take an occasional good shot, but that's not the measurement. That is not what this type of photography is about. Regardless to what you might hear online, this is not a numbers game. Taking a lot of photos and hoping that something will come out of it, it's a horrible advice to follow. To become better at that, you need to bring your intention and your subjective view of the street on the table. Show people the way you look at things. Photographers don't get acknowledgement for a single photo here and there, but through a consistent body of work that produces a common thread. You need to understand that everybody at the beginning is taking snapshots. It's just no way around it. That's absolutely normal. But in order to move beyond snapshots, a photographer needs to pass through several stages. The first stage is about the philosophy of creation. What is the photo about and everything that make us take it in the first place? The second stage is related to the compositional mechanics behind the image structure. Basically composition, or how the thing is presented. And the third stage is the vibe and the mood, how the image feels, which is actually driven by our choices of light and color. To create a complete photograph, all these three need to be there. To get better at passing that first stage, you must consistently ask yourself, what am I shooting? What themes are closest to my heart? What is my message? Or what do I try to show or say with this photograph? Over time, these answers will crystallize and they will shape your unique identity as an artist. Someone will look at your work and say, hey, I know that guy, I can recognize the work. When you begin your journey, it's completely normal to mimic other photographers you admire. Copying helps you understanding the technique from inside out. I always say that doing it once will teach you much more than hearing about it 10 times. The practical experience is priceless. So definitely, if you like certain approach, go out and try to make it. Learn how it's done. But there is a dangerous trap here. You have to try to be honest with yourself. Many photographers mimic famous aesthetics and they start to feel good about it and start believing that these are their own original discoveries until someone points out the similarities. You don't want to be called out like that or known for that. Use the imitation as a stepping stone to learn. You probably shouldn't even share these type of images, but even if you do, don't make them your permanent identity. Even if you don't get caught imitating, in the long run, those photos will clash with your true personal taste. The next step in that journey is dealing with clichés. These are really hard to avoid because often the photo just looks good. Someone lighting a cigarette just photographs so well. For example, there is a whole industry of travel photography that is thriving on clichés. Think of something like the holy man on boats in Varanasi. It has been done and overdone so many times, and there are so many different things that are exactly the same. They're beautiful to look at, but it has been done so many times that it became a cliché. So even if you get a great photograph that way, understand that clichés are lazy trophies. They immediately signal a lack of originality to an experienced eye. It is okay to have a few photographs like that in your portfolio, but if your work relies on tired visual clichés, sophisticated viewers will notice and fail. Always aim for more personal perspectives, something that speaks more about yourself, something that speaks more about you. You yourself are the primary source of originality. Be yourself. There is no one like you. Originality is not just about finding a unique subject. a lot of it can be attributed to how you construct the frame. And that brings us to the physical architecture of the image. A great photograph is built on physical architecture. If you start analyzing classic paintings, scenes from a movie, or great photographs, you will quickly notice that the things that make one medium work are the exact same things that make the other work. Composition is universal throughout visual art. You can easily draw parallels between great photographs, fine art, and cinema. We don't need to dive too deep into advanced composition today, but we will explore a few basic concepts that you will need out there. I love movies, and often I pause them and just to see what the director of photography had in mind when framing a shot. And when we're looking at cinema or painting, the very first structural element that holds a frame together is usually lines. Lines dictate where the viewer's eyes travel in the frame. I have a dedicated video about lines which you should probably check out, but what I want to point out here is how critical they are to timing. The lines in your frame must align with the moment, that exact fraction of second when you press the shutter button. And why is that? Because often your subject moves and you're following him with your camera. As you're following him, your background changes all the time. And if there are lines there, you need to pay attention to those. Because if you don't pay attention, these lines can ruin your image. If you hunt only for the moment and ignore the lines, you risk diminishing the power of that moment. When a line is present in your frame, it should work in your favor, not against you. And of course, it doesn't end with lines. Master photographers like Alex Webb build extreme depth by stacking multiple visual levels into the same frame. For many beginners, these photographs look as way too busy and complex at first. They don't understand them. But over time, as you develop your visual taste, you will see that the chaotic environment is actually very well structured. Nothing is really random there. It's a form of organized chaos. He will often use a foreground, an element framing the scene, a slightly out of focus object or a silhouette, and then a middle ground containing secondary characters or transitional elements, and a background containing the primary subject or an environmental anchor. Sometimes the primary subject can be placed in the foreground or middle ground too, but what is important to notice in his work is that most of his frames feature deep, well-structured, and well-thought-of structure. Nothing is random. Every line is in the right place, and every cut of subject is intentional. Webb also doesn't just stack layers randomly. He ties them together through color, patterns, and repetition. You will see the same color echoing through the image, or a geometric pattern running across the entire frame. All these things have been noticed before he actually captured the image. And all of this can be achieved by developing high awareness of the compositional elements in the scene. That awareness comes from intentional practice. I've actually created a 30-day compositional challenge designed specifically for this purpose to help you become more aware of the environment you're photographing in. You can pick it up from the link in the video description. Beyond building depth with layers, another structural choice that dictates the energy of the frame is the horizon line. I often see remarks about the horizon line, that it always must be straight. Many people believe that crooked horizon line is an unforgivable sin. And that can be true. Sometimes the scene and the characters in it demand a strict level structure. But very often, taking that horizontal line and turning it into a diagonal or even tilting it slightly will introduce an extra energy or tension. If your scene can benefit from psychological unease or fast-paced motion, embrace that tilt. Don't be afraid to play with the lines. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, photography is not purely about geometry. Shapes, form, background elements provide the backbone and the structure of the frame. But on their own, they don't carry a strong emotional signature. Yes, certain forms make us feel a certain way, but an emotional response is mostly triggered by the light and colors of the scene. That is the final. It's the skin that is wrapping all these structural bonds together. A lot of this can be tweaked in post-processing, but your images will be much stronger if you learn to work with the light and the color right there on the scene. And when it comes to color and light, you need to master two basics. First one is how to create a feeling of harmony. And the second one is how to work with contrast. Learn the different types of light and how they make a viewer feel when he is looking at your image. Study basic color theory to understand how contrast and harmony can dictate the mood. Color and light are the emotional signals that finalize your idea. It's not just about the moment. Now to the question of sharpness. I know a lot of photographers whose very first step is opening an image on a 27-inch 5K display. They will zoom in to 300% and start pixel peeping for sharpness. And if it's not that sharp, they feel like they somehow failed. These guys will do everything possible to capture the image with the maximum sharpness, and that is the primary metric they use to judge their own and others' work. I personally strongly disagree with the notion that a photograph must always be tack sharp. In street photography, intentional blur can convey a dreamlike, mystical, or hypnotic state. Sometimes an autofocus face can hit you harder emotionally than being able to count every single wrinkle on a person's skin. This is also why a lot of great street photography can be done with a simple $200 lenses. You don't need the details of high-end professional glass to tell your story. Professional lenses are nice to have and they will give you razor sharp images, but more often than not, on the street, you will be battered by their size and weight. Let me give you a few exercises to help you learn more about your own work and develop your artistic voice, so you can start producing more intentional images that feel more like you. The first thing that I would suggest to do is to create your personal mood board. Gather your absolutely best photographs into a single collection and analyze them objectively. Do they look like a cohesive body of work created by one author, or they're all over the place, kind of a mixed bag of everything? If your work feels disjointed and you're most likely still in your copycat phase, this means that you are still figuring out what you like and what you dislike and what your visual language should look like. And that is totally fine. Look closely at these photographs and see where you lean the most. Try to identify what speaks to you and use that direction to refine your focus. The second one is to get some external validations. Take these same photographs that you selected earlier and assign an emotional adjectives to them. For example, mystical, melancholic, strange, funny, or aggressive. Then show them to friends or even strangers and ask them to describe the feeling that the images evoke. If their feedback matches your intent, your visual language is successfully translating to an audience. If not, it's time to sit down and think about what you can adjust to make that connection and that translation to visual language clearer. The third and last exercise is actually a fun one. Watch a movie that you love and moves you emotionally. Whenever you encounter a scene that strikes you visually as interesting or makes you feel something strong, pause it, take a screenshot or photo, and draw some lines over the frame. Map out the position of the characters, their gaze direction, the geometrical shapes, and the diagonal lines, or any lines that are there. Look at the light and the color of the scene, and see what the photography director focused on that particular moment. That breakdown and doing this regularly trains your brain to instantly recognize the structural and emotional blueprints behind great visual storytelling. We use composition to communicate an idea. The goal with all these exercises and learning to see better is so that when you see a scene and press the shutter, that first instinctive click is not just random reaction. I don't want you to take another snapshot. I want the photo to be the natural result of everything you learned about composition and how to translate what you see. So work on the way you translate what you feel into visual form. Master composition to become better at sharing your point of view, and come back with photos that really say something. I hope this was useful. Let me know in the comments if you need me to clarify anything. And see you next time. And as always, happy shooting!